My name's Elise. One day, my parents showed up at my doorstep, demanding I sell my apartment to pay off my sister's $150,000 debt. They said I didn't need such a big place after all. But here's the thing. They hadn't spoken to me in 5 years. Ever been asked to save someone who never cared? Tell me your story. I never expected to hear from my parents again. Not after 5 years of silence. That day, the phone rang, their names flashing across the screen. A pause followed. Answering felt unavoidable. "Elise, we need to talk," my dad said, his voice steady. "It's about your sister." A shift on the couch, a breath held. "What about her?" "She's in serious trouble. $150,000 in debt. We need your help." The words landed slowly, refusing to settle. "Help how?" "We need you to sell your apartment. You have more space than you need. It's time for the family to sacrifice." Sacrifice. The same family that vanished 5 years earlier, right when support mattered most. The thought almost drew a laugh. Almost. "You've got to be kidding," came the reply. "Years without a word, and now you want a bailout?" "We're family," my mom added, her voice sliding in beside my dad's. "We help each other." Her words barely registered over the pounding in my head. "Then where were you when things fell apart for me?" Heat rose fast. "Why isn't this on you?" Silence stretched. A throat cleared. "We've tried," my dad said. "You're the only one who can fix this." Fix it. As if damage like this could be reversed. "Please," he added, softer now. "We're out of options." The phone rested on the table while disbelief settled in. This wasn't a request. It was a demand. The screen lit up again. "Fine," came the answer, tight and controlled. "I'll come over. Explain it face to face. Everything." An hour later, the house came into view, unchanged, heavy with old history. The kitchen table held my parents. 2 police officers stood near the door. A chair scraped back. "Why are they here?" "We need clarity on the family's finances," one officer said. "There's an investigation." "So this mess includes me now?" A glance passed between my parents. My mom spoke. "Your name is on the mortgage. You've been helping us for years." The twist in my stomach sharpened as papers slid across the table. 3 years of payments," I said, "while money was hidden. And now this?" Color drained from my father's face. "Elise, that's not—" "No!" The word cut clean. "This stops now. Either she owns her debt or I walk away." The room locked in place. No one followed as I left. The phone calls didn't stop. If anything, they intensified. After the confrontation with my parents, there was a brief hope that the worst had passed. That hope didn't last. The first call came from my mother. "What the hell did you think you were doing?" Linda demanded, anger sharp even through the line. "You don't drag your family through the mud like that. You humiliated us." "Humiliate?" A short laugh escaped. "Years of silence, Mom. What response did you expect? Applause?" "Don't speak to me that way," she snapped. "You have no idea what this means. Family stands together. You're supposed to help, not make things worse. Do you even care about your sister?" A reply was forming when the call cut off. Her words lingered, louder than what followed. Family. It had never felt like one. My father followed soon after. Same message, same blame. "You think you're above us now?" His voice was tight. We raised you, Elise. This is your thanks? The call ended before another sentence could land. Then came the notifications. Creditors, banks, missed calls stacking up. Ignoring them didn't ease the pressure. It pressed harder, leaving no room to think. There was no time to sit with the weight of it all. Too many demands competing for attention. One of them was Marcus. For months, he'd been guiding me through pieces of my family's financial tangle, though the full scope had only become clear recently. He'd been there while I tried to stay afloat. "Do you want to meet?" he asked the next day. "Yes, we need to." Paperwork covered his desk when we sat down. After a pause, he spoke carefully. "Things have escalated. The bank wants the full mortgage payment. They're threatening foreclosure." A breath slipped out. Fingers brushed hair back. "I know. I just don't see a way forward." "This isn't simple," Marcus said. "But focus matters. Your family is applying pressure, but this is your life. Hard decisions are unavoidable." The words landed, but the weight on my chest didn't ease. Calls, messages, demands, everything felt like it was closing in at once. The rest of the day disappeared into forms and documents. Each page felt like a reminder of being trapped. Marcus's advice echoed, "Stay focused." On what? With what strength? Another email arrived from my mother. Reading it felt inevitable. "Your sister needs you. She's suffered enough. Don't make this worse for her." The phone slipped from my hand onto the table. The accusation stung, even though it wasn't new. Rachel hadn't reached out. Not once. The sister at the center of everything remained silent. Anger lingered. So did hurt. Letting go didn't feel possible. This wasn't only about family anymore, or debt, or mistakes that weren't mine. Being pulled in had changed the stakes. Walking away sounded tempting, almost necessary, but others were tied to the outcome too. Returning home brought no relief. The house felt hollow. Familiar rooms offered no comfort. Each step through them emphasized how distant everything felt. Enough. No more playing the role of savior. No more compliance. And yet, standing there, surrounded by the fallout, clarity refused to come. Fixing it all seemed impossible. Choices were easier when answers were obvious. Now, nothing was. One thing was certain. Their control had to end. The decision belonged to me. Where to begin remained unanswered. For the first time in years, I stood at the center of my own life and felt completely lost. The email arrived just after lunch. Nothing urgent was expected, so seeing the bank's name in the subject line gave me pause. More bad news was the last thing I needed. But the message was opened anyway. "Dear Elise Harris, this is a reminder regarding your outstanding mortgage balance. As of today, your account is in arrears. The total amount due is $85,000. We request full payment within 30 days or further action will be taken." The screen blurred for a second. $85,000 made no sense. Mortgage payments had been made consistently for 3 years. Everything had been handled responsibly. An additional balance shouldn't exist. This was the first notice of its kind. A sick feeling settled in my stomach as the phone came up and Marcus's number was dialed. "Hey, it's Elise. I just got an email from the bank. It says I owe $85,000. A pause followed. "Let me check," Marcus said. "I'll call back." Minutes dragged into an hour. The living room felt smaller as pacing wore a path across the floor. The email wouldn't let go. None of it added up. Then the phone rang again. Not Marcus. The police. "Miss Harris, this is Officer Mallory from the Financial Crimes Unit. We're continuing our investigation into your family's finances. We need to speak with you about some discrepancies in the mortgage payments." "What discrepancies?" My voice stayed steady. "Payments were made every month. "We need to review records," Mallory replied. "There's information you may not be aware of. We'll arrange a meeting." Something I didn't know. The phone slipped into my lap. The weight of it all came down at once. This wasn't just my parents' problem anymore. Whatever had been hidden, manipulated, or altered now had my name attached to it. By the time Marcus called back, every possible scenario had already played out in my head. "Elise," he said, serious now, "I've reviewed the bank's claim. There's a pattern of irregularities. This is more complex than we thought." "I've been paying every month," I said. "You told me everything was fine." "There are gaps. Payments that weren't properly logged. Missing records. Someone has been covering their tracks." My stomach dropped. "I need to meet with the police," I said, hands shaking. "I don't understand how this happened." "I don't have all the answers," Marcus replied. "But we need to figure out who kept this from you." The next few days blurred together. Pressure from investigators intensified. More questions, more requests, more scrutiny. Answers were scarce. Trust felt impossible. My family offered no help. They closed ranks. My mother called repeatedly, each conversation more frantic. "This isn't right, Elise. You're tearing this family apart." "Fair!" The word came out sharp. "How is it fair that I'm cleaning up what you left behind?" "We're desperate," she said. "If you don't fix this, everything falls apart." Nothing made sense anymore. Life felt unfamiliar, crowded with ghosts that didn't belong to me. The pressure spread beyond family. Whispers surfaced. Neighbors, acquaintances, people with no connection at all. Our financial mess had become public. The scandal was no longer contained. Ignoring it didn't help. Each day sank deeper than the last. After another sleepless stretch, a decision formed. Waiting for the truth wasn't an option anymore. Files gathered over weeks were pulled together. They still didn't fully align, but something was there. Too many gaps, too many patterns. Something had been done intentionally. Running from it wasn't possible anymore. The next morning, the police station came into view. Evidence wasn't complete, but there was enough to demand answers. Sitting across from Officer Mallory, the files slid across the table. "This is everything I have," I said. "I'm not letting this disappear." He scanned the papers, expression guarded. "We'll see what we can do." Walking out of the station, uncertainty still lingered. But the pieces were moving now, and there was no turning back. The letter arrived a week after the files were handed to the police. Thick, cold, official. My hands shook while tearing it open. Reading past the first line wasn't necessary. "Final notice. Foreclosure proceedings have been initiated due to non-payment of mortgage." The edge of the couch pressed against my legs as shock set in. This couldn't be happening. The process had already begun. Reading it again didn't help. The words blurred, refusing to settle. There was supposed to be time, space to fix this. The bank's number was dialed, voice unsteady when someone answered. "I just received this letter. I've been making payments. This isn't right." The response came flat, rehearsed. "Our records show the account has been in arrears for several months. Multiple reminders were sent. Foreclosure proceedings must continue." Reminders? Confusion cut through the fear. "Nothing ever came. Why wasn't I notified?" "I'm sorry, but the process will move forward." The sentence landed hard. Fingers tightened around the phone while breath came shallow. The room felt smaller, walls pressing in. This mess started with my family, but it was no longer stoppable. Control had slipped away. The house, the one I believed I was protecting, was already being taken. The call ended without goodbye. My parents' voices filled my head before they ever spoke. Blame would come next. Responsibility never would. That pattern was familiar. Calling my father confirmed it. "You've caused enough damage," he said. "You think I don't see what you're doing? You're abandoning us now? I'm trying to understand what you hid, I snapped. I've been cleaning up lies while everything collapses. His tone sharpened. If you'd sold the apartment like we told you, don't. The word stopped him. I tried to help. You put me here. I can't save this for you. Silence followed. No apology. No denial. Just absence. The call left me hollow, but clarity followed. This couldn't continue. By the next day, pressure escalated again. Police, financial institutions, relentless calls. The house was no longer the issue. Something larger was unfolding, one I hadn't prepared for. Rumors moved faster than facts. Eyes lingered longer than before. Walking out to collect the mail, a neighbor glanced over. Concern or judgment, it didn't matter. Either way, the story was out. Bills and notices piled up inside. Then one envelope stood apart. Marcus. The letter was opened immediately. Elise, there have been developments. Prepare for the worst. The bank is accelerating action. Decisions must be made now. The kitchen table felt heavier than usual as the message settled. Time had run out. Trying to fix everything had led nowhere. Carrying the weight of a family unwilling to face the truth had drained what was left. Marcus was called immediately. What options are left? The words came thin. I don't know how to stop this. His voice stayed steady. You stop paying. You're not legally responsible. You've covered their debt long enough. Let the truth surface. The meaning was clear. If payments stopped, the house would be taken, and everything hidden would be exposed. A pause followed. For once, the urge to save them wasn't there. I can't do this anymore, I said quietly. Let the consequences happen. Marcus waited before responding. You're certain? Yes. The line went silent. The decision hung in the room, heavy, irreversible. It wasn't what I wanted, but it was the last choice left. Now the truth would come out, whether anyone was ready or not. The phone rang incessantly. Every call was another reminder that the world outside my family was closing in. The creditors, the police, the reporters, they were all knocking at my door, figuratively and literally. It was only a matter of time before someone knocked in person, asking questions that I couldn't answer. I sat at the kitchen table, staring at the paperwork in front of me, unable to focus on the words. They blurred together like some sickening reminder of how deep I'd fallen into this mess. I had been the one to try and keep things under control, but the weight of everything was unbearable now. The clock was ticking. There was no more time for second chances. The phone buzzed again. This time, it was from Marcus. Elise, we need to talk, he said, his voice tight. The bank wants an immediate payment, or they'll accelerate the foreclosure process. You've got about 2 weeks before they file. 2 weeks. That was it. 2 weeks until everything I had tried to protect slipped through my fingers. Is there anything else we can do? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. I can't do this alone. We've exhausted every option, Marcus replied. You need to make a decision now. I hung up, feeling the walls close in again. I had spent weeks trying to save them, my family, my home, but nothing was working. Every attempt had backfired. Every word of reassurance from my parents had turned out to be another lie. I couldn't fix this anymore. There was no path back. The worst part? They didn't even understand the gravity of what they had done. My parents were still trying to paint me as the villain. They acted like I was the one who had let them down. Why didn't you act sooner? My dad had demanded a few days ago. We told you, Elise, you needed to step up. Step up? I had snapped. I've been trying to fix this for months. I'm not a miracle worker. You could have sold your apartment. Helped us out before it got this bad, he argued. I couldn't even look at him without feeling disgusted. He was so consumed by his own selfishness that he couldn't even comprehend the depth of the mess they had caused. You're on your own now, I said, ending the conversation before I said something I couldn't take back. Each call from them felt like a slap in the face, and each call from the bank felt like a countdown. The pressure was becoming too much, and I was running out of time. No matter what I did, it wasn't enough. I was buried under the weight of other people's mistakes. The rumors hadn't helped. Every time I left my apartment, I could feel the stares, whispers behind my back. People knew. The whole damn neighborhood knew. I couldn't escape it. Hey, I heard about your family's situation, someone at work said to me one afternoon. I hope it all works out for you. I just nodded, offering a hollow smile. It didn't matter what they said. Everyone had their own judgment, their own opinions. They all looked at me as if I was responsible for everything, when in reality I was just trying to keep my head above water. Thanks, I said, walking away before the conversation could go any further. I didn't want their sympathy. I didn't want to hear how sorry they were. I went home that night to a still apartment, the silence echoing louder than ever. My family's mess had become everyone's business. It was like living under a microscope, and I was crumbling under the weight of it all. It was late when I finally sat down and looked through the pile of papers again. The numbers didn't add up. The more I dug into the bank statements, the more I realized that something had been hidden from me. More lies, more manipulation. I wasn't just paying off the mortgage. There were other loans, accounts I didn't know about, money siphoned off to places I didn't recognize. I slammed the papers down on the table in frustration. How had I not seen this before? Marcus was right. There was nothing more to be done. The house was going. The debts were too much. The only thing left to do was face the consequences. I had spent too much of my life trying to fix things that weren't mine to fix. I had put my hopes into a family that would never take responsibility. But if I wanted to regain control of my life, I needed to make a decision. And that decision would be mine alone. So I made it. The next morning, I called Marcus and told him what I had decided. I'm done paying for their mistakes, I said. It's time to let everything come out. I won't protect them anymore. Marcus was silent for a moment. Are you sure? I'm sure. The more I dug into the financial mess my family had created, the worse it got. I thought I had seen the worst of it. What was left to uncover? But then, I found something that stopped me dead in my tracks. It was a small detail, buried in a pile of documents I'd been combing through for weeks. A bank statement, one I hadn't paid much attention to at first. But now, looking at it again, the figures were glaring at me. There was a transfer, a large one, almost $500,000. The money had been sent to an account in Switzerland, under my mother's name. I had to take a moment to breathe. I reread the statement, trying to make sense of it. This wasn't just bad bookkeeping or missed payments. This was deliberate. My mother had hidden money. The realization hit me hard. I wasn't just dealing with unpaid debts. I was dealing with betrayal. I thought about how my mother had always told me we were struggling, how she always made me feel like I was the one who had to carry the weight. How could she have done this? All those times she cried about not being able to pay the bills, about the mortgage threatening to swallow us up. She had been lying to me the whole time. I sat there for what felt like hours, staring at the screen, trying to make sense of it. But there was no understanding this. I could feel the anger rising in me, mixing with the deep disappointment. How could I ever trust them again? How could I have been so blind? I had never seen my mother this way, and I knew I had to confront her. But the truth had been building for so long now, and each piece of it was harder to swallow than the last. My family was falling apart, and everything I had worked for, the apartment, my financial stability, was unraveling before my eyes. The police had been investigating for weeks, and now they were closing in. The evidence was mounting. I felt like I was just waiting for the inevitable to happen. There was no way out. The truth about my family's finances was no longer just mine to carry. It was public, it was real, and it was devastating. I was losing control of everything. The house was gone, the debt was insurmountable, and now even the relationship with my parents was crumbling. I didn't know how to fix it. I didn't even know if I wanted to anymore. But I had a choice to make. I couldn't let this consume me. I couldn't spend the rest of my life running from the truth. I had to confront it, even if it meant burning bridges with the people I had tried so desperately to protect. I called Marcus. "We need to do something," I said when he picked up. "I can't keep pretending everything is fine. I know what they've done. They've been hiding money, and He cut me off, his voice steady but concerned. "Elise, what are you thinking? What do you want to do with this?" "I don't know," I said, my voice cracking. "I can't just let this keep happening. They've lied to me for so long. I don't know if I can forgive them for this." "I get it. But if you go public with this, if you expose everything, it's going to get messy. You have to be prepared for the fallout." I stared at the documents in front of me. I don't care about the fallout anymore. I'm not going to keep cleaning up their mess. One thing was clear. I couldn't keep letting them manipulate me. I couldn't let them dictate my life any longer. If I was going to fight for anything, it had to be for my own future. As the days passed, I knew I was running out of time. I had no choice but to push forward. If I wanted to take control back, I had to make a decision, and I had to make it now. I looked at the evidence once more, then picked up the phone. It was time to make a move, even though I knew there would be no turning back. I dialed the number for the bank. It was time to expose everything. "Hello, this is Elise Harris. I need to speak to someone about the discrepancies in my family's financial records," I said, trying to sound calm, though my heart was pounding in my chest. "I have evidence of fraudulent activity. We need to discuss the accounts immediately." The voice on the other end of the line sounded surprised, but they agreed to set up a meeting. I ended the call and set the phone down, my hand still shaking. I wasn't going to wait any longer. The stakes had been raised, and I wasn't going to let my family or the authorities walk all over me anymore. For too long, I had been on the defensive, letting them dictate the terms of this battle. But now, the tables were turning. I'd spent weeks collecting evidence, every bank statement, every email, every document that had slipped through the cracks. I knew they wouldn't make it easy, but I had to act. I wasn't just fighting for a house anymore. I was fighting for my life, for my dignity. Marcus had been invaluable, but now it was time to take things into my own hands. "Elise, we've got some new information," Marcus said, his voice calm but charged with urgency when he called that afternoon. "I've tracked down a few things. Some of the accounts your family's been involved with aren't just isolated cases. There's more. Much more." I felt a small spark of hope. It was the break I needed. "What do you mean?" "Several transactions were funneled through offshore accounts," he continued. "These accounts are linked to your mother, but they're not just regular savings accounts. There's something more here, and it's all connected." I took a deep breath. This was the moment I'd been waiting for. The proof I had was solid, But now I had something more substantial. This wasn't just a case of unpaid bills. This was fraud. "This could change everything," I said, my voice steady. "We can't let them get away with this. We're going to take this to the authorities, but we need to move quickly." I hung up the phone, my pulse racing. For the first time in weeks, I felt like I had a chance to fight back. I wasn't going to be their scapegoat anymore. I wasn't going to be the one who kept cleaning up their mess. It was time for them to face the consequences of their actions. The next day, I met with Marcus and handed over everything I had: the bank statements, the emails, the proof of illegal transfers. It was all there, ready to be presented to the authorities. I had been playing by their rules for far too long. Now, I was rewriting the game. As we walked out of the meeting, I could feel a shift in the air. I wasn't just reacting to what was happening anymore. I was taking control. By the time we got back to my apartment, I had a new plan in mind. It was risky, but it was the only way forward. The authorities would need more than just the evidence I had. They needed to understand how deep the corruption ran. My family had been lying to me for years, and now it was time for the truth to come out. I called my parents that evening. "We need to talk," I said, the words firm but not angry. They knew this wasn't going to be a simple conversation. "Why do you keep pushing this, Elise?" My father's voice came through the line, tinged with frustration. "We've been through enough. You're just making things worse." "Worse?" I repeated, incredulous. "You think this is just about the house? This is about everything. About the lies, the deceit, the money you've been hiding." "Enough of this nonsense," he snapped. "You've gone too far this time. You're destroying the family." "I didn't destroy it," I said, my voice cold. "You did." The conversation ended, but I could hear my father's words echoing in my head. They would never admit the truth. They would never take responsibility. But I wasn't backing down. The next day, things started to move quickly. The police and financial authorities began their investigation into the offshore accounts. The pressure on my parents was mounting. They were no longer in control of the narrative. I was. I could see the shift in them. My mother started calling more often, though her tone was less certain than before. She was starting to realize that her lies weren't going to protect her anymore. "Elise, you don't know what you're doing," she said, almost pleading. "This isn't the way. You'll destroy us all." "You've already destroyed us," I replied. "And I'm not going to keep fixing it for you. This is your mess. You need to face it." I hung up before she could respond. I wasn't playing the martyr anymore. I wasn't going to be their fixer. Days passed, and the weight I had carried for so long finally started to lift. I had my power back, and I wasn't going to let it slip away. For once, I felt in control of my own life. But as the investigation unfolded, I knew I was entering the final stretch. The authorities were closing in, and my family was scrambling. I couldn't stop now. I had one shot at this, and I wasn't going to waste it. As the weekend arrived, I sat down with Marcus once more. "I'm ready," I said, my voice steady. "Let's go public with everything." He didn't hesitate. "We're doing the right thing." The news hit like a storm, and once it started, it couldn't be stopped. My parents were no longer untouchable. The weight of their deceit had finally caught up with them. While they hadn't been prosecuted for their actions, the consequences were just as harsh. The community turned its back on them. Friends who had once stood by their side now whispered behind their backs. My mother's friends, those who had shared her laughter, her secrets, stayed silent, or worse, joined the chorus of judgment. They had been taken in by her charm, her lies, For so many years, now they saw the truth. "You're going to ruin everything," my mother had said when the truth first came to light. "Do you understand what you're doing? You're destroying our family." It wasn't my fault. It had never been. The lies they told to protect themselves had built a wall around us. But that wall had cracked open, and now there was no escaping it. But as I watched everything crumble, I didn't feel the satisfaction I thought I would. There was no gloating, no sense of triumph. It was just quiet. The silence of justice. I didn't rejoice in their downfall. Their careers were in shambles. Their reputation was irreparably damaged. Friends and colleagues no longer picked up the phone when they called. Family members distanced themselves, not wanting to be dragged into the mess they had created. Their once stable life had crumbled, but the truth was, they had done it to themselves. For me, it wasn't about revenge. It wasn't about watching them pay for what they did. It was about reclaiming control of my own life. I couldn't keep living in the shadow of their mistakes, waiting for them to make things right. They had made their choices, and I had made mine. I had decided long ago that forgiveness wasn't on the table. Not after everything. I wasn't going to let them back into my life, not like before. The years of manipulation, the endless gaslighting, the burden of carrying their mess for them. It was too much. I couldn't undo the damage, but I could decide how my story was going to end. So, I cut the ties, completely. No more phone calls, no more visits, no more pretending. I was done. "Are you really going to leave all of this behind?" my mother asked, her voice breaking as I packed my things. "I've already left," I told her, my heart heavy but resolute. "You just don't know it yet." I moved out of the city, found a small place on the outskirts, and started over. It wasn't glamorous, but it was mine. It was peaceful. No more watching my back, no more second-guessing every decision I made. I finally had the space to breathe again. The hardest part wasn't leaving the past behind. It was learning to trust myself again. For so long, I had been living for other people, trying to fix what wasn't mine to fix. But now, I had to learn to live for me, to make decisions that were mine alone. At work, I started to feel the weight of my independence again. I wasn't just the daughter of those people anymore. I wasn't known for being their problem solver or their scapegoat. I was Elise, someone with a purpose and a future. My work, my accomplishments, they were now mine to take pride in, not a reflection of my family's mistakes. But even with all the progress, the journey wasn't over. Every now and then, my thoughts would drift back to the life I left behind, to the moments that had defined me for so long, to the faces of my parents, disappointed and angry, but more than anything, broken. It was hard to shake that feeling, the lingering guilt that came with walking away. But I had to remind myself, I wasn't the one who broke everything. They did that. I kept moving forward. Day by day, I built a life I could be proud of. A life where I wasn't defined by the failures of the people around me. I was creating something new, and for the first time in a long time, I could see the future clearly. One morning, as I sat with a cup of coffee by my new window, watching the sun rise over the horizon, I realized something. I wasn't just surviving anymore. I was living. And for the first time in years, I felt free.